I had a rough day fishing on the lake. He spent the entire day under the scorching sun without catching a single fish. On his way home, he stopped by the supermarket and ordered 4 catfish. But then he asked the fishmonger, "Can you throw them to me?" The fishmonger looked puzzled. "Why do you want me to throw them at you?" Jim grinned. "So I can tell my wife I caught them." The fishmonger chuckled and said, "All right, but you might want to go with the orange trout instead." Jim raised an eyebrow. "Why's that?" "Because your wife stopped by earlier and told me that if you came in, I should tell you to take the orange trout. That's what she wants for dinner tonight." Did you hear about the shy guy who called an service? A stunning woman knocked on his hotel door, and he nervously let her in. "Ma'am," he confessed, "I should warn you. I'm not very experienced." She gave him a reassuring smile. "Oh, sweetheart, don't you worry. By the time I'm done with you, you're gonna feel like a real man. Now go ahead and get comfortable in bed while I freshen up." He shrugged and did as she said. A few minutes later, she stepped out of the bathroom, looking even more breathtaking. She climbed into bed, but within seconds, she gasped, threw back the covers, and stared wide-eyed. "I thought you said you weren't very experienced," she exclaimed. He grinned. "I meant like a newborn. 8 pounds, 21 inches. A priest, nearing the end of his mission in the jungle, realizes he never taught the native tribe English. Determined to leave them with something, he takes the chief for a walk through the forest. He points to a tree and says, "This is a tree." The chief nods and replies, "Tree." Encouraged, the priest points to a rock and declares, "This is a rock." The chief again responds, "Rock." The priest is thrilled, feeling his teaching is finally paying off. Suddenly, they hear rustling in the bushes. Curiosity piqued, they peek over and see a couple of natives engaged in a rather intimate moment. Flustered, the priest blurts out, "That's a man riding a bike." Without missing a beat, the chief pulls out his blowgun and shoots the couple. Shocked, the priest exclaims, "How could you do that? I've spent years teaching you about kindness and civilization." The chief looks at him and calmly replies, "My bike." In prison, a fellow inmate struck up a conversation with a priest who had just arrived. Inmate: "So what landed you in here?" Priest, lowering his voice: "Well, I had an affair, and the nun ended up pregnant." Inmate: "Man, why didn't you just use protection?" Priest: "Some religious scholars say it's not exactly permissible." A woman was flying from Melbourne to Brisbane when, unexpectedly, the plane was diverted to Sydney. The flight attendant announced there would be a delay and gave passengers the option to get off the plane, which would reboard in 50 minutes. Everyone got off, except for one lady who was blind. A man noticed her as he walked by and realized she was blind because her seeing eye dog lay quietly under the seats throughout the flight. He also noticed the pilot, who approached her and greeted her by name, asking if she would like to get off and stretch her legs while the plane was on the ground for an hour. The blind lady replied, "No thanks, but maybe Max would like to stretch his legs." At that moment, all the people in the gate area froze when they saw the pilot walk off the plane with the seeing eye dog, wearing sunglasses. Panic ensued. People rushed to change planes and even airlines. The moral of the story: things aren't always as they appear, and a day without laughter is a day wasted. A couple in their 80s had been struggling with their memories, so they decided to visit the doctor for a checkup. The doctor reassured them that physically they were fine, but suggested they start writing things down to help with their memory. Later that night, while watching TV, the husband got up from his chair. His wife asked, "Where are you going?" "To the kitchen for a drink," he replied. "Will you get me a piece of cake?" she asked. "Sure," he said. She gently reminded him, "Don't you think you should write it down so you don't forget?" "Nah, I can remember that." he insisted. Okay, but I'd like some strawberries on top. You'd better jot that down. I know you'll forget. I can remember. You want cake with strawberries, he said confidently. Oh, and I want whipped cream on top too. You really should write that down because I know you'll forget. Getting a bit irritated, he snapped. I don't need to write it down. Cake with strawberries and whipped cream. With that, he grumbled into the kitchen. About 30 minutes later, he returned with a plate of bacon and eggs. She stared at it for a moment and exclaimed, "Where's my toast?" Late one night, the house was eerily quiet. The only sounds were the ticking of the clock and the occasional creak of the floorboards. Bob was deep in sleep, his peaceful rest uninterrupted by anything. Suddenly, his wife jolted awake, her heart racing. She turned to him, her voice panicked. "Honey, wake up! The cat drank all the milk!" she whispered urgently. Bob, half asleep and groggy, mumbled loudly, "For crying out loud, woman, how many times do I have to tell you? Wear a shirt to bed." An 82-year-old man had just returned from the doctor's office with devastating news. He didn't have much time left. Wanting to settle his affairs, he called together the three most important people in his life: his doctor, his priest, and his lawyer. "I don't have long," he said, "and I need a favor from each of you. I'm giving you each an envelope with $50,000 inside. When I'm gone, I want you to throw the money into my grave as a final gesture." The three solemnly agreed. After the man passed, the three met to reflect on their promise. The doctor sighed and confessed, "I have to admit I kept $10,000 to cover some outstanding medical bills, but I threw the other $40,000 in." The priest shook his head. "I must confess as well. I kept $25,000 for the church, but I did put $25,000 into the grave." The lawyer gasped in shock. "I'm appalled at both of you. I wrote a check for the full $50,000 and threw it right in." Teacher: "Why didn't you study?" Student: "Well, let me break it down for you. There are 365 days in a year. After taking away 52 Sundays, we're left with 313 days. Now factor in the 50 days of summer, way too hot to study, and we're down to 263 days. We sleep 8 hours a day, which adds up to 122 days gone. That leaves 141 days. If I spend just 1 hour a day messing around, that's another 15 days gone, leaving us with 126 days. Eating takes up 2 hours a day, so subtract 30 more days, and we're left with 96. Then I spend 1 hour each day talking to friends and family, which knocks off another 15 days, leaving us with 81. Exams? They easily take 35 days, so we're down to 46. Then come holidays, about 40 days. And now there are just 6 days left. If I get sick for 3 days, we're down to 3 days. Let's say I go out twice. That leaves me with just 1 day to study. But that day, it's my birthday. And that's why I didn't study." A man was out in the field, helping one of his cows give birth, when he noticed his 4-year-old son watching from the fence, eyes wide open, taking in the whole scene. The father thought, "Oh boy, here we go. He's only 4, and I'll have to explain the birds and the bees soon. But no need to rush. I'll let him ask first." After the calf was born, the man walked over to his son, ready to answer any questions. "So, son," he said, "do you have any questions?" The little boy, still wide-eyed, gasped and asked, "Yeah, just one. How fast was that calf going when he hit the back of the cow? Some things just can't be explained." A 17-year-old guy walks into a drugstore and approaches the counter. He says, "I've been invited to Christmas dinner at my new girlfriend's house, and I'm hoping things go well. You know, I'm hoping to get lucky." The clerk nods and says, "How about some condoms? They might come in handy. Here's a pack." After paying, the young man heads toward the door, but stops, smiles, and comes back. Actually, her mom is pretty attractive too. Maybe I should take another pack, just in case I get extra lucky. Fast forward to Christmas Eve. The boy sits at the dinner table, hardly saying a word. After a while, his girlfriend turns to him and says, "If I'd known you were going to be this quiet, I wouldn't have invited you." The young man responds, "If you told me your dad works at the drugstore, I wouldn't have come." A man walks past a five-star restaurant and notices a sign in the window, "Piano player wanted." Curious, he steps inside and asks to speak with the manager. "I'd like to apply for the job," he says. The manager leads him to the piano to see what he can do. The man sits down, places his fingers on the keys, and begins to play. The music is breathtaking, easily the most beautiful piece the manager has ever heard. Moved to tears, he pulls out a handkerchief to wipe his eyes. "That was incredible," the manager says. "What's it called?" The pianist smiles. "Oh, that's an original of mine. I call it The Day My Cat Learned to Tap Dance in D minor." The manager blinks. "Huh, do you know any others?" The pianist nods and launches into another tune, somehow even more stunning than the first. Overwhelmed, the manager steps outside to collect himself. When he returns, he hesitantly asks, "And what's that one called?" The man proudly replies, "That's oops. I mistook the shampoo for toothpaste blues." The manager sighs, rubbing his temples. "Listen, I'm hiring you because, frankly, you're the best pianist I've ever heard. But there's one condition. Never tell the patrons the names of your songs." The man agrees, they shake hands, and he starts that very night. His performance is mesmerizing. Diners are enchanted, wiping away tears as they savor their meals to the sound of his masterful playing. Midway through his set, he announces a short intermission. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be taking a brief break. Please enjoy your dinner. I'll be right back." He hurries to the restroom, does his business, and rushes back to the stage, completely forgetting to pull up his pants. As he steps out, a customer entering the bathroom gasps and says, "Hey, buddy, do you know your pants are down and everything's on display?" The pianist smirks. "Know it? What do you think I've been playing for the last 20 minutes? The pastor's wife was expecting a baby, and in light of this, the pastor stood before the congregation to ask for a raise. After much debate, they agreed to a new rule. Whenever the pastor's family grew, so would his paycheck. However, after the couple welcomed 6 children, the congregation began to feel the financial strain. They called a meeting to discuss the growing costs of supporting the pastor's expanding family. The room quickly filled with heated arguments about how much more the church could afford. After listening to the back and forth for nearly an hour, the pastor stood up and calmly said, "Children are a gift from God, and we will gladly receive as many gifts as He chooses to give us." The room fell silent. Then from the back pew, a frail elderly woman slowly rose to her feet. With a shaky voice, she said, "Rain is also a gift from God, but when we get too much of it, we wear rubbers." The entire congregation in unison said, "Amen." An 80-year-old woman sits at the bar in Harpoon Harry's waiting for her husband when a strikingly handsome man enters and takes a seat a few spots away. He's so attractive that she finds herself unable to look away. After a few moments, the man catches her gaze and approaches her with a confident smile. Before she can apologize for staring, he locks eyes with her and, in a low, sultry voice, says, "I'll do anything you want, anything you can imagine, no matter how wild or unusual. I'll make it happen. All I ask for is $100 in cash. And there's one more condition." Still in shock, she asks, "What's the condition?" He grins, leaning in closer. "You have to tell me what you want in just 3 words." The woman pauses, thinks for a moment, then calmly reaches into her handbag, pulls out $100 and places it in his hand. With a mischievous smile, she looks him directly in the eye and slowly says, "Paint my house." "I've lived a long life, seen the world from 36,000 feet, raised kids, saved a dog, and yet I still have so many unanswered questions. Like, seriously, who did let the dogs out? Where's the beef? And for that matter, how do I get to Sesame Street? Why doesn't Dora just use Google Maps? Why are eggs packed in flimsy cardboard while batteries come in plastic that could survive the apocalypse? Why do women instinctively open their mouths when applying mascara? Who decided abbreviated should be such a long word? And why is lemon juice made with artificial flavor while dish soap is made with asterisk real asterisk lemons? Why do they sterilize the needle for lethal injections? Why do we put in our 2 cents, but only get a penny for our thoughts? Who's pocketing the extra penny? I want answers. Why do The Alphabet Song and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star have the same tune? And why did you just try to sing them both? What exactly is Victoria's secret? And why won't she just tell us? And finally, do you really think I came up with all of this myself? No way. I got it from a friend who got it from her cousin's neighbor's ex-boyfriend's sister's hairdressers, mailman's gym buddy's barista. Now it's your turn to pass it along. Let the mysteries live on. Peace. A Marine boarded a train on his way home from deployment. The train was quite crowded, and the Marine walked the entire length looking for a seat. There seemed to be one next to a well-dressed, middle-aged French woman, but when he got there, he saw it was taken by the woman's poodle. The war-weary Marine asked, "Ma'am, may I have that seat?" The Frenchwoman sniffed and said to no one in particular, "Americans are so rude. My little Fifi is using that seat." The Marine walked the entire train again, but the only seat available was under that dog. "Please, ma'am, may I sit down? I'm very tired." She snorted. "Not only are you Americans rude, you're also arrogant." This time the Marine didn't say a word. He just picked up the little dog, tossed it out the train window, and sat down. The woman shrieked, "Someone must defend my honor! Put this American in his place!" An English gentleman sitting nearby spoke up. "Sir, you Americans seem to have a penchant for doing the wrong thing. You hold the fork in the wrong hand. You drive your autos on the wrong side of the road. And now, sir, you seem to have thrown the wrong female out the window." And before you go, here's the deal. I tell jokes on YouTube, but this is no joke. For every 1,000 subscribers and likes on this video, I will find 50+ homeless people and donate $100 each to them. Hit subscribe and let's spread laughs and kindness.